Hey folks, it's Casey McLean, and it is the Poor Sports Seattle podcast. It's not live today. My life's been very busy since the last time I recorded live. Since I last recorded, I'm trying to think because I went on vacation in Ocean Shores with my family. Did I record something in the interim? Truly, my life has been like nonstop moving and shaking. I got to go open for one of my favorite comics, Whitney Cummings, at the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, which was just a truly insane experience. Whitney Cummings has a work ethic. She's very funny, but she has a work ethic that's like unmatched in comedy, and it was really cool to see that in person. Sorry if we're repeats. I genuinely cannot remember what was on the last episode of this podcast. Could go back and check. Could have gone back and checked before we started recording here. Too bad. Not live. I'm going to go over my guys, we're calling them, and I used Chat GPT to hopefully create a funny slideshow of images of Seahawks GM or whatever he is now. Is he GM? He's GM still, and then the Mariners have the GM president bullshit. John Schneider getting progressively more intoxicated throughout my slides. So Chat GPT. By the way, I've like been using it a little bit. I subscribed just to check it out. I'm not worried about AI just yet. I know there's a lot of alarmism about it. Not I. I'm not worried about it. It's really cool. It's got a lot of cool features, a lot of stuff that's really good, but it's missing something. However, it did do a decent job of, at least in the first couple pictures, of depicting John Schneider, and then it lost the thread a little bit, but the pictures continue to get funnier and funnier, in my opinion. So we're going to go through that. I'm going to go through all of the guys that I like in this draft right now. And, of course, probably a couple of them will get added, but not only the guys that I like, but where. So when I say a guy that I like, I'm telling you I would be happy no matter where the Seahawks drafted him. Now, I might look at it and go, this isn't great value, but I'm going to go, I like that player, and I'm excited to see what he can do in a Seahawks uniform. There's guys outside of this that I like some, but these are like the guys that I'm stoked about. It's a decent chunk of guys, by the way. I've never actually set a list up like this, and you'll see how it's set up as we go through it. Here's what I also set it up in terms of not the round that I think they'll be picked, and not the only round I'd be happy if they got picked in. Like, I think that, again, I'm not kidding you. I think if the Seahawks, whose front office I trust have a decent eye for talent, if they drafted one of these guys in the first round, I'm going to assume they know something about that guy and believe in something about that guy's talent. Some of them, there's no chance these guys are going to go in the first round, but I'm telling you, I like all these guys, and I have them broken up by round because it's the order of, like, not only the conviction that I have, but where I think they present just like remarkable value. If the Seahawks drafted them in that round or did something, they represent remarkable value. Because this year's NFL draft, and I said it a couple months ago, you're going to start to hear, because there's a lot of people eating off this draft. There's a lot of people who make money off of draft content. There's a lot of people who make money off of scouting, mock drafts, draft interest. And you were going to start to hear people creep the quality of this draft up, and it's happened. I've seen it. It's not a super deep draft. The peak is not super high, and that's the case. There's some depth. There's some positions that have a fair amount of depth, and anyways, so we will get into that very quickly, and then we'll do a mock draft simulation. We're going to go PFF again. I'm in an argument with a friend of mine. He just texted me, so I got to start really just throwing my phone in a wood chipper before these. My wife's probably going to call because I did not tell her I was podcasting. In fact, we'll try to covertly send that message right now because, lady, I'm podcasting. All right, we're doing that right now. I could have edited it out of this entire podcast. I could have edited it out, but no, for you, I'm leaving it in. I could pull this down. I could cut that part. I do not have time to do a lot of editing. One last check before we get into this. I want to make sure that my audio is coming from the source that I want it to be coming from. So, boy, oh boy. This is some professional podcasting. I'm just going to assume that it is, I guess, because I can't seem to access it. Okay. Um, that is odd. But anyways, we are going to swap over to my guys. We're going to start with this is our pal John Schneider. Not a bad depiction. Like I said, it's going to start to lose the thread and it'll be hopefully funny. This is our pal John Schneider with a glass of whiskey, a bottle next to him. And we're talking about the needs the Seahawks have and the strengths of this draft from my perspective. And some people maybe think this is and I actually already know I missed a strength because it's not on here. I think the Seahawks need a receiver. They definitely need a receiver. They need a guard. I think they need somebody good at guard. So I would say like first 3 rounds is where I would put that guy. They need to draft somebody there. They need a corner. There's not a lot of I'm not super stoked on the depth behind Devin Witherspoon and Reek Woolen. And I would like to see them draft a nose tackle in particular. And that's actually where I think the strengths of the draft, they seem to fit the Seahawks pretty well. So the draft strengths, or the strengths in this draft, in my opinion, running back, tight end, interior offensive line, so guards. Many of those guards can play center, but I think specifically guards, and I mean that because one, I think a lot of the guys that are slated as tackles or that are presented as tackles will actually end up playing guard in the NFL. And I think a lot of the guys who may end up playing center out of this draft are technically guards right now. All right, my phone is going to go right up somebody else's ass because it keeps going off. And then the other thing that's a strength in this draft, in my opinion, is interior defensive line, but not nose tackle. There's a couple of nose tackle options, not nose tackle. I will say nose tackle is not something that every draft has a ton of strength in, and not every team needs a true nose tackle. Like a zero technique nose tackle is not a need. I don't think it's like a glaring need for the Seahawks, but I do think there are a couple options where they will have picks, and I think that filling that position instead of going and paying a guy like Jonathan Hankins like they did last year, getting a guy in the first round or in the mid rounds or later rounds, but somebody that can be that body that eats up, like a 1.5 down guy would be fine. I've talked a lot about Kenneth Grant being a 2.5 down guy. Jonathan Hankins was a 1 or 1.5 down player. One, maybe down to 1 because of perhaps his ability to play a ton of snaps consecutively. I believe that he played like less than 40% of the Seahawks snaps last year, and maybe even less than that. But I'm going to acknowledge right off the bat, if you're watching this, there's going to be some negative comment. Interior defensive line, I think, is also a strength. Weaknesses of the draft, I think that the top of the quarterback ranks are not very strong, but there's a lot of depth. Not a ton of receivers. I think there's plenty of bodies, but not the top end is not very good, and I think it falls off pretty quickly. I think there's talent scattered through every round, but not like there's just not a ton of depth, in my opinion, at receiver, and certainly not guys. And I feel this way about offensive tackles also. There's not a lot of guys who are like have multiple great things about them, like multiple great traits, and a lot of guys have 0 great traits, and you're kind of trying to like make a composite of a bunch of slightly above average traits. The offensive tackle pool, you're like anyone that's got the pedigree has short arms. Anyone that's got long arms has no pedigree or is undersized or whatever. And the edge class is fine. I don't know that the edge class is particularly good for what the Seahawks need. And I don't know that it's particularly good. I think it's like average. And then corners, I think it drops off very quickly. There's an assumption, I think, because of past Seahawks teams, maybe providing a little bit of bias, but the Seahawks have a pretty dire need at corner, I think, and especially if they don't plan on keeping Reek Woolen in the fold. I think that yeah, it's and what corners are being paid these days, I don't know if they can afford to keep Reek Woolen in the fold. All right, so let's get into this. We'll get to the next slide here. I don't use the slideshow thing very often, so this is John Schneider. First drink of the day. You see he poured his whiskey out of this bottle. Our next one, he's sitting next to I don't know if this is funny at all. Please weigh in on if this is funny in any way. Also, John Schneider, all in good fun. Come on the podcast. I really like John Schneider. I know that that's not necessarily the most popular opinion. All right, so these are the guys that I think would be great value. I want to make very clear. Every player that I am going to list is going to be somebody who I like a lot. So if you think I have them too far down, remember, I would be okay with the Seahawks drafting them at any point in this draft. But I'm telling you, this is where I think they would make tremendous value for this draft. There's only 2 guys in this draft. I think last week I might have said there's only 1 guy in this draft I would trade up for. I've modified that slightly because of how unique I think Kenneth Grant is in this draft and in any draft. I would trade up for Armand Membu. I think he's the only guy that can be an all-pro left tackle in this draft. And he might not be able to. He might be just right tackle. Maybe he moves into guard. He's the only guy I think that has the physical traits and the body to and the skill to become an all-pro left tackle. And it's not super important that in 2025 he becomes a left tackle, especially for the Seahawks, because the Seahawks have Charles Cross and they have Abraham Lucas. He doesn't have to play tackle at all. He could play left guard. He could come in, start at left guard if they trade up for him. But both those guys, Charles Cross, they're going to have to decide on the 5th-year option. Abraham Lucas, I believe, is in the final year of his deal. There's going to be movement on that offensive line and at the tackle position, and they don't have the guy on the roster to take that spot right now. I think Membu could potentially come in and be a very good guard in 2025 and be one of the tackles of the future if one of those guys moves on, which is pretty likely that one of them ends up moving on pretty soon. And like I said, Kenneth Grant just has the body type and skill set and physical traits that are just very unique in this draft. All right, next slide. John Schneider, he's, it doesn't show up very well on here. He has, let's get this banner out of the way, actually. Let's get that out of there. There we go. There's the remainder of my list. He spilled a little whiskey on his scouting report, but he's still doing all right. It's losing the thread on looking like John Schneider also. These are guys I would like to see the Seahawks draft in the first round if they fall to them. I don't think Will Campbell's going to fall to him, by the way. I don't think Mason Graham's going to fall to him. And I don't think that Shamar Stewart is likely to fall to them. Other than that, I would like to see Kelvin Banks is a guy who can play guard, who I have very high. I am not a die-hard Gray Zabel guy at all. Josh Connerly, I think, is another guy who could play left tackle. He could passably play left tackle, certainly could play right tackle, could play guard. His very peak upside maybe is a Pro Bowl left tackle. The more likely scenario is that he's not quite that good, but I think would contribute right away and then has potential to move out to either side if one of the Seahawks tackles moves on. Kelvin Banks, same story. Same exact thing. Will Campbell is listed as a tackle everywhere but here. I think if Will Campbell comes to Seattle, and I've heard a lot of people say this is not my original opinion, though it's one I agree with, is Will Campbell's like a Pro Bowl left guard right away. Maybe best guard in the league eventually if he plays guard. If you draft that guy at 18, some may view that as early. John Schneider probably won't draft a guy that's inside only. That high would be my guess. But I also don't think he's going to fall there. I know that his arm length has probably dropped him in some people's on some people's boards, or maybe they already knew. I think that's another thing is a lot of times we assume that these guys are just finding out that Will Campbell has short arms. They know. They're watching tape. They know who has short arms and long arms. They're looking at lots of arms. Okay? And, Mason Graham is Braden Fisk was the guy that I think had a comparable skill set last year, kind of undersized, short-armed defensive tackle with a lot of athletic ability. Mason Graham's very similar. It's possible that Mason Graham would have fallen further if it weren't for Braden Fisk's success. But I think there's a chance that the consensus is wrong on Mason Graham. I don't think so. I don't think he makes it out of the top 10. I'd be kind of surprised if he makes it out of the top 5. But were he to fall to the Seahawks, run to the podium. And there's guys, by the way, like Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. I'm scared of Travis Hunter. I'm glad the Seahawks don't have to make that decision because I'm worried about a guy getting hurt, like seriously playing 17 games and trying to play 100 snaps a game. But those guys are never going to be realistic for the Seahawks to think about. Same with Cam Ward. Cam Ward was never going to be on there. I will tell you, Shedeur Sanders is not going to be on this list. There's plenty of guys. These aren't the only guys that I think the Seahawks might consider or the only guys that are worthy of first-round consideration. These are just guys that if the Seahawks drafted them in the first round, I would be stoked because I like the player a lot. Oh, now John Schneider has switched to beer in our AI photos. Beer helmet on, still drinking out of a pint glass for some reason. Come on, ChatGPT. Also, by the way, there's some controversy with folks around whether or not you should use ChatGPT for art. Here's what I'll tell you. I'm not going to pay someone $1,000 to make a couple slides worth of art. So it's either that or nothing. I'm fine with you. If you want to argue about the ethics in the comments, please do. Okay, so these are guys I would be stoked if the Seahawks took them in the second round because I like the player so much, and I think this would be decent value for any one of these guys. Jackson Dart, long-storied, or not long-storied, actually kind of short-storied, but like became a darling early in the draft process, kind of became a presumptive first-round pick pretty early. I do think we're going to see with the quarterback position, whatever the chalk is right now of how these guys are ranked, and I would say like the chalk rankings are Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck. Who's next? Probably like next is the McCord kid, and then Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, and then there's like kind of a after that it becomes a little less chalky, a little less consensus, but there's a bunch of guys, Riley Leonard and a bunch of players after that Jalen Milroe. I missed Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe's probably, where did I have? Probably somewhere in that Tyler Shuck range for most people. I think there's a lot of present buzz that he might go in the first round. Which we could talk about this more later, but there's value in drafting a guy there's a lot more value in drafting a guy 32nd as opposed to 33rd. And most of you are probably aware of this, but I'm not going to take that for granted. The team will get a 5th-year option on that guy. They would get an extra year of, like in baseball, they would call it team control. But they would get an extra year to figure out if that guy is, especially if it's a quarterback, is that guy the quarterback of the future? Is he the left tackle of the future? The Seahawks have had an opportunity. They'll get an extra year on Charles Cross if they want it because he got drafted in the first round and not later on. You don't get that for later draft picks. So at the beginning of the draft process, I said I think there's going to be 3, if not more, quarterbacks drafted in the first round. I think Shedeur Sanders has done just about everything he could to move out of the first round. I still think he probably ends up in the first round. Jackson Dart probably ends up in the first round. And they invited Jalen Milroe to the draft. So somebody knows something. They make that decision based on like a consensus of teams that they're talking to, which is maybe playing somebody's hand a little bit, but like they don't want Jalen Milroe to come and sit till the second round. They don't want to embarrass him. They don't want to embarrass their players. They don't want their league to look stupid. I like Quinn Ewers a lot. My opinion, it seems like the opinion just keeps getting worse on him, and mine hasn't changed a ton. I think he's incredibly talented. My comp was Geno Smith. I mean that favorably. I like Geno Smith quite a bit. Ewers can move around a little bit. Great arm talent. Has some flaws that hopefully coaching can take care of. If you take a guy in the second round, I will say, because we have not talked about the Drew Lock signing yet, I think that the Drew Lock signing probably stops you from taking a guy in the first round, certainly, probably in the second round. Drew Lock's the presumptive backup for this team. I haven't seen the actual contract. I don't know how easily the Seahawks can get out of it. I don't know if this is something that they could potentially cut him if somebody takes that spot, if somebody forces him out of that spot. But I do think it deprioritized quarterback for the Seahawks by quite a bit. And it probably means that Sam Howell's gone, but maybe not. I mean, I think the Seahawks have a chance to keep Sam Howell for essentially free. So if they don't find the right position to draft a quarterback here, maybe Sam Howell sticks around. I saw some suggestions that he might be a trade candidate. Like the Seahawks could go get a 6th-round pick or a pick swap for him. I think it's possible you could do like a 6-7 pick swap or a 7-7 pick swap that moves you up a couple picks. I don't think Sam Howell's got a ton of value right now. I think Sam Howell's getting an invite to somebody's training camp. I don't think he's in baseball. It's like a non-roster invitee. I don't think he's getting a guaranteed contract if he gets released by the Seahawks. You might even be able to, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, and I don't even know for sure what the stipulations are to make him eligible for this, but you might be able to get him out to the practice squad. Ariante Ursary, big athletic tackle that I've liked for a long time. A guy that could play tackle, could move into guard, moves really well for his size, very powerful. Gray Zabel, if they got him in the 2nd round, him or Tate Ratledge, I'd be stoked on it. Like I'm not into the idea of drafting a guy who is like guard only at 18, really. Nor do I think the Seahawks are and I don't think Gray Zabel's going to last this far. I'm not trying to like, again, I'm not. And if they took Gray Zabel in the 1st round, it would be a lot of resources devoted to it, but it would solve a problem. I like the player. I'm not as high on him as some people. If they take him in the 1st round, I think they've solved a problem, an ongoing problem for a long time. I just don't think it's great value there, and I don't think that John Schneider values that position that high there. And it's not even that I don't think that. He's basically said it. So, again, not projecting Gray Zabel here. This is where I think it would be like massive surplus value. Alfred Collins, one of the few nose tackles in this draft. Landon Jackson is a guy that's, and I've started to hear this term used more often. I've used it a couple times on this podcast. Positionless football, just like positionless basketball. If you go watch basketball now, and I know a lot of Seattle folks have not because the Sonics haven't been here, and I applaud you for holding out for so long. I have not watched that much NBA basketball in recent years and watched none for many years, but you'll start to notice the point guard is 6'4", 6'5", the center is 6'8", 6'9", and all these guys can shoot and dribble. There's not as much of a skill separation or a size separation position to position as there used to be. A lot of them can rebound, a lot of them can shoot from the outside, a lot of them can dribble. So I think that the Seahawks kind of have their pass rush, their dream configuration of their pass rush is to have a bunch of guys who can play all over the front 7. You have no idea where that person's going to go once the ball is snapped. Is he going to rush? Is he going to cover? Is he going to line up with his hand down? Is he going to line up standing up? We don't know. You don't know. We don't know. And it's confusion is I think the edge that the Seahawks are trying to get from a coaching and scheming perspective. And a guy like Landon Jackson can play anywhere from 4-3 defensive end. He's got the size, 3-4 defensive end. Size to play 3-4 defensive end. So those guys that are typically 280 to 300 pounds and aren't like, oftentimes are not tremendous pass rushers, though I think Aaron Donald has certainly changed the paradigm on that. To 4-3 defensive end to 3-4 rush linebacker. So Landon Jackson, I think, is a guy that covers those bases really well. He's a better version of what the Seahawks wanted out of Draymond Jones. Darian Porter, cornerback out of Iowa State, former receiver, super. Now I'm worried that I'm mixing up. Savon Ravel is not a former receiver, I don't think, but maybe he is. Both these guys, similar skills or similar measurements, similar things to be excited about. Great athleticism, great size. Both guys, I think, fit what the Seahawks do pretty well. And I'd be happy with either one in the second round. Okay, next slide. Also, one other thing. This is not a ranked list. This is just literally like in the list of the order they would be on a Madden depth chart. So it's not that I have the quarterbacks are going to be grouped with the quarterbacks. I do not have the scouting acumen to be like, here's my 1 through 100. I go, here's a clump of players that I think are pretty similarly valuable. Now John Schneider is he's peeing in the he's peeing at the urinal. Third round, Jalen Milroe. Why is Jalen Milroe in the third round and not the second round? Again, if they took him in the second round, if they took him in the first round, I'm stoked on the player. I like the player. I like the skills. There's a lot to be excited about with Jalen Milroe. To me, when you're drafting guys in the first and second round, those are kind of guys that you expect to come in and be a starter right away. Rounds 3 and 4, I think you expect those guys to become starters in the next 1 or 2 years at the latest. Otherwise, I think they're considered pretty bad draft picks. Round 5, you're hoping that guy will become a starter in his rookie contract. And then round 6 and on, I think you're taking risks. You're taking flyers. Jalen Milroe is kind of throws a curveball at that idea because I think you can get him on the field for 10 or 15 snaps a game without having to worry about Drew Lock. Make him your third quarterback, but keep him on your active roster. Keep Drew Lock your backup quarterback, and Jalen Milroe can just learn over the next couple of years and also contribute in real time. Savion Williams is a guy that I've talked about I've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, arguably. Had, I believe, the highest contested catch rate in football last year, 72%. 72% of contested catches he made. Also has a bunch of these other ancillary skills, played wildcat quarterback, ran the ball a ton. There's a lot of Cordero Patterson comps, but I think maybe his receiving upside is a little higher than Patterson's was. And maybe his ability to play a true running back is not as good as Cordero Patterson's. I also like Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. Marcus Bowe out of Purdue. I like guard, moves around really well. And then Xavier Watts, safety from Notre Dame. It feels like the Seahawks are destined to get a safety from Notre Dame, not just Julian Love, but a safety from Notre Dame. I thought Julian Love might step in and become that Kyle Hamilton type guy that I think the Seahawks are waiting to see if the present coaching staff is going to just keep using Devin Witherspoon in that role or try to get him outside and replace him with a comparable player. Xavier Watts, a Notre Dame safety who can cover some, can play the slot. I would guess probably goes in the second round from the stuff I've seen, but I'd be very excited with him in the third round. Tyler Shuck is, so we get into the fourth round there. Tyler Shuck is certainly an interesting prospect. 25 years old, oldest quarterback in the class. I want to say he's older than, is he older than Bo Nix? There was somebody from last year, I believe, that he was you're like, fuck, he's older than that guy. He's only a couple years younger than Sam Darnold. Tyler Shuck is a guy that I think you want to come in and play very quickly. If the Seahawks draft him, it would be intriguing. And I think the Seahawks are, by the way, fine with letting a guy just rot on the bench for the years that he could have been productive. If he doesn't earn the spot, he doesn't earn the spot. Bashal Tutin, I don't think that's spelled right. I think I might have left out a Y in there. Just hyper fast running back from Virginia Tech. Brashard Smith, converted receiver, another running back out of SMU. Big and the fourth round, by the way, is a little high for me to want the Seahawks to draft a running back. There's been a lot of Cam Scatabo talk. If he goes any higher than the fourth round, I don't want him. And especially the idea that they would draft a fullback in the second round, give me a break. I think Scatabo is interesting. I think there's a lot of good running backs in this draft. I don't think the Seahawks have an immediate need. They still have 2 years of Zach Charbonnet. They have Kenneth Walker for next year. I believe he's a free agent after the year. there's not an immediate need to fill that position, and then we could get into the whole discussion about how valuable the position is, et cetera, et cetera. Jalen Lane. This Virginia Tech team had so much speed. Jalen Lane is a guy that I think is going to look like he's got the body type of a slot receiver, but the athleticism that I think he's got potential to play on the outside. And I think anything you can do to not force Jackson Smith and Jigba to go outside constantly is going to be better for his career. Now, of course, they brought in Cooper Kupp. They brought in River Craycraft. They also brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling to play on the outside, but you want some diversity in that spot. I think that Jalen Lane has the physical ability to go play on the outside, potentially, because of his just elite athleticism. But I think the initial reactions will be, oh shit, another slot guy. Not necessarily just another slot guy. And then another guy, Elijah Roberts. I think I put him down as a defensive tackle at SMU, but another guy that's got some versatility to move around on that line a little bit. Probably more like inside outside 4-3-3-4 can do both. Maybe not exactly an edge rusher, but hold on, is Elijah Roberts listed as an edge rusher? Now I'm questioning myself. I might have just fucked up on the. I've been questioning. I don't know if you've heard the doubt, but yeah, he is listed as an edge rusher, but he's 285 pounds is the point. So he's got scheme versatility. Maybe not an ideal just straight up edge rusher, but again, a guy that can play across many of those positions, a guy that can be a Draymond Jones type. Incorrectly listed as a defensive tackle here, though I think he could play some defensive tackle on pass rush downs. Look at me, by the way, just go with myself and not question myself hard in real time. What a coward. All right. 5th round and 6th through undrafted free agent, and here our John Schneider he's succumbed to alcohol for the night. There's beer and whiskey all over. He's still got the beer helmet on. And guys I would like in the 5th round, Donovan Edwards, running back out of Michigan. If you're a Huskies fan, you got to see him torch the Huskies. Charles Grant, offensive tackle from William and Mary. I think a guy that's probably a little undersized, not a road grader that I think a lot of people want the Seahawks to draft. But again, this is a guy, I think that a thing that if you're a Seahawks fan, one thing to get used to or to become aware of in this draft, because the Seahawks figure to probably draft an interior offensive lineman pretty early, is most guys who play tackle can hold their own if they bounce inside to play interior offensive line. It's like second base and shortstop. Like most shortstops can play second base. Most shortstops can play third base. I guess like the analogy would be right. Most left tackles can play right tackle. Most left tackles can play left guard and right guard. Centers maybe a little bit different, but like most guys that can play tackle can move in. It's a lot harder to find a guard who can move out, which, by the way, not on this list. If you like Tyler Booker, I know that was a comment on one of the early versions of my mock draft simulation. Is you got to draft Tyler Booker. I would be more interested in Tyler Booker if he could legitimately play tackle, but he not only does he not move well enough, I think, for the scheme, but like can't really pull off tackle, especially not in his own scheme. Charles Grant's going to be undersized, a more finesse version of that. Jackson Slater, local kid, guard / maybe a center. Interesting guy to keep an eye on. I'd be stoked in the 5th round. It's possible he ends up being undrafted. And if that's the case, priority phone call, like very high on the list. There's a guy from Wake Forest I've seen bounce all over the place. Another guy who's the last nose tackle on here, which is Zeke Biggers. So I do want to make clear, I don't have a single, outside of the mistake on Elijah Roberts, I don't have a single defensive tackle that's not a nose tackle on my guys. There are guys that I like, but not that I liked enough to be like, this is like a sexy pick. Who was the guy that I liked a couple years ago quite a bit? I think he got drafted by Philadelphia, Jordan Davis, was it out of Toledo? He is a Philadelphia Eagle. And where did you play? Where did you play? Georgia. Who's the Toledo guy? Hold on. Defensive tackle. This isn't exciting. I had quite a run going, and then there's a Darius Alexander this year, but I'm thinking of a previous year. Anyways, I can figure that out later. Who I'm thinking of. Anyways, there's guys that I like, but they just don't. I just don't find them incredibly unique, nor do I find that to be like a particular need for the Seahawks. Those guys are probably going to play defensive end for the Seahawks most often. So like Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, there's already 2 starters in place there. So it's always a rotation on the defensive line. I don't think those guys, I mean, I don't know what Murphy and Williams played last year, but they certainly didn't play 100% of the snaps, and it was probably like, if you really go look at snap counts, it's probably less than you think. But I think that because those guys are there, it's not a glaring need. I like Zeke Biggers, big defensive tackle, athletic type of profile. Big, like a very athletic for his size. Maybe we'll go earlier. I've seen him going later on some stuff, or seen him projected later. I'd be stoked any point in this draft. Za Frazier, quarterback at UTSA, University of Texas San Antonio, converted receiver, super impressive, elite measurables, big, long, a guy that fits exactly what the Seahawks do. A guy who compares favorably to Reek Woolen and compares favorably to what the Seahawks are looking for in a cornerback. Maybe a little raw, but a guy who, if you're drafting him this late, and I don't know if he'll last this long. Again, to clarify, if they draft him in the 4th round or the 3rd round, nobody's got a better reputation drafting defensive backs than the Seahawks. I'm gonna trust it. And then the 6th round, undrafted free agent group of guys. Again, some of these guys might not fall this far. I'm interested in Curtis Rourke, Isaiah Nair. I found Isaiah Nair because I was trying to find like a late round person who shared some traits with DK Metcalf. And I found Isaiah Nair, who is like, I want to say, is maybe let's look at relative athletic score real quick. He's a guy who's basically projected to go undrafted. Had shaky quarterback play at Nebraska. Also played at Texas. Where does Nair rank on here? Let's go. So he is the 3rd ranked relative athletic score wide receiver in this year's draft. And the other 2 guys, Landon Parker and Isaac Tesla, are projected to be drafted ahead of him, I believe. Landon Parker projected around. Probably just could have gone to his Landon Parker combine. Watch me just fall in love with draft profile. Come on now. Why are these? What am I? Maybe I've talked myself into loving Landon Parker. Why do they not have Landon Parker on here? I got Landon Jackson. Let's see if I could find Landon Parker on here. Did Landon Parker do everything at the pro day? Am I fucking something up, folks? Let's see. We gotta find. This is not exciting for anyone, but now I feel like. Hold on. Landon Parker. Am I crazy? I think I might have been confusing him with Landon Jackson as far as draft projection goes. Okay, well, I'll figure out Landon Parker later. Anyways, Isaiah Nair, the thing that stood out to me about Isaiah Nair is super elite athletic traits, long arms, which is something that I thought about. I was thinking about DK Metcalf and how he's not a natural catcher, but he makes some of these catches away from his body. And he looks like he has long arms, and he did. He had long arms, I think 34-inch plus. Isaiah Nair has like almost an exact profile to like an exact scouting report of DK Metcalf, like hyper athlete. He did bounce around a little bit, never was like super productive as a receiver. You could argue that a guy like DK Metcalf and maybe a guy like Isaiah Nair will do better as pros because they have a quarterback who can actually get the ball to him. Has the same route running deficiencies in his scouting report as DK Metcalf did. I want to say he's like 20 pounds lighter than Metcalf was, but super athlete, higher on the relative athletic score actually than Metcalf was, and by most accounts looks like he'll go undrafted. And a guy who has the speed that maybe you're like, this guy could be a return guy, or this guy might, because of his size, might be able to contribute in special teams and also be a project to become a very good receiver or a contributing receiver or a guy that makes one big catch a year and is around for the rest of the year. Nick Nash, San Jose State, former quarterback, great route runner is the scouting report. I'd be happy with him earlier, but I'd be really stoked with him this late in the draft. Luke Lachey, same deal. I mean, not he's a tight end, but like good athletic profile coming off of an injury. Clay Webb, this is the last of the, like, this is not a sentimental pick. Clay Webb, athletic guard, good value this late. If they haven't done anything, if they haven't drafted a second offensive lineman, I think this would be their second offensive lineman at the least. Great pick this late. And then Jabbar Muhammad will just always hold a special place in my heart, despite abandoning Washington for Oregon. And I think that he'll be an interesting, competitive NFL player. And if he's not drafted, I'd love to see him end up in a Seahawks uniform. And if he's drafted late, I'd still be pretty stoked about it. All right. Those are my guys. We're done with my guys. And now we are going to go to the mock draft simulation. We will run it slow. I'll try not to filibuster too much. We'll run it a little bit slow to begin with, and obviously we will speed it up at the end because nobody gives that much of a shit. Now you know my guys. You can try to guess who I'm going to draft based on where we're at. And I'm going to get this closer and closer to what I think would be like a realistic selection as opposed to taking this draft as it comes. Some people might be angry about that. Too bad. That's the way that I'm doing it. Find someone else if that's what you want. The one thing I'm going to be upset about, I don't think Cleveland is going to take Shedeur Sanders. Good, they didn't take him there. I suspect, the Giants took Armand Membu there. Who, if he comes down to about 12, I would trade up for him. I don't know where he's going to go now. Maybe the Jets, because the Jets have tended to take him on here. I've seen they take Abdul Carter at 7. That's nearly certainly not going to happen. Shedeur has not gone yet in this draft. He's probably going to be available when the Seahawks pick. In real life, if that happens, I would suspect that they'd start to consider a trade if someone was interested. I'm not going to do that on this one. Should I do a trade? We'll do a trade. We're going to do one little trade if he falls here. Let's see. Am I crazy? Did he go? Yeah, Shamar Stewart went there. I don't know if he's going to go. If I trade, this is the problem with these, though. Is Pittsburgh going to be someone that wants to trade? Yeah, that would make sense if Pittsburgh wanted to draft a quarterback. They have the 21st and 83rd pick, which I think lines up okay on the draft chart. We can give them a little something on the back end to even it out a little bit. But are they going to actually take Shedeur here? Okay, we're going to do this one trade. I don't like doing trades on these necessarily. We're going to do this one trade, and they take In the real world, I think they would be trading up for Shador. They don't take Shador. That is one of the limitations of these mock draft simulators. Is I don't think Pittsburgh makes that trade unless they're coming up to draft, Shador. Kind of makes me want to restart it, but I also don't want to waste your time. So it's easy for me. Of my guys, who's left? Kenneth Grant, Kelvin Banks. Kenneth Grant goes at 19. If that's probably who I take at 19. Got greedy, fucked up, taking Kelvin Banks. Should have taken Kenneth Grant, especially if in this simulator Pittsburgh isn't going to take Shador Sanders with that pick. I do think that's, by the way, a real potential option. If Shador Sanders is available there, I really do think that the Seahawks and Pittsburgh make an interesting trade partnership. I also heard some speculation or someone questioning if they regretted not just trading for Geno Smith because their third-round pick was higher than the Raiders' third-round pick, and they still have all this problem with Aaron Rodgers, trying to figure out if Aaron Rodgers is going to come or not. I'd be curious if that's true. Shador goes 33rd overall. I think that's probably a little late. I do think he'll go in the first round. I don't think Dart went, did he? No. Dart should be coming up off the board here pretty soon, I think. PFF, by the way, still very low in their actual rankings on Jackson Dart. They disagree with the consensus pretty strongly. There he goes. He goes 42 to the Jets. Dart to the Jets is a pretty damn good name combination. I would not have taken Jackson Dart at 50 here, I don't think, but I would have thought about it. I certainly would have thought about it. Savon Ravel goes. That's unfortunate. Okay. I actually like Jaden Higgins a bit, but we gotta follow the list. I think at this point, they've taken Kelvin Banks, so taking Tate Ratledge, I think, is not off the table. I think it's possible that Ariante Ursery is off the table at this spot because moving a guy into guard versus a guy who's a natural guard, you maybe, deduct him since you don't have to worry about him playing tackle if you think Banks would be the guy you'd move out to play tackle. But also, I don't know that there's Darian Porter's a guy that's, I think you probably take Darian Porter here. And we're going to get low grades, by the way, because I'm going to take these guys based on where I think they'll actually go and not based on the rankings that they are on PFF. So we're going to take Tate Ratledge. Now I think you're done taking offensive linemen until the very end of this draft, which is kind of unfortunate because there's other good offensive linemen that are going to be available, but you took care of interior and solved the problem if Abe Lucas is not able to go for a full season. Tate Ratledge is probably a guard only. I don't know if he can play center or not. So you probably have either your two starting guards, Kelvin Banks, Tate Ratledge, or guys who are putting a lot of pressure on Christian Haynes. And at this point, if the Seahawks are ready to move on from Haynes, maybe they could find someone who will give them a 4th-round pick or something or a 5th-round pick for Haynes. Because if it's not going to work out, it's not going to work out. And if you can find a guy that you think will work out, I don't think you have to. I don't believe in the hanging on to Haynes because he's a sunk cost. I think 3rd round is the earliest the Seahawks will take a quarterback. Now, because of this trade that I made, 1 extra 3rd-round pick, 82nd, 83rd, and 92. Marcus Bowe goes. We were going to draft another offensive lineman anyway. So we've drafted a corner. We've drafted 2 offensive linemen. Still need receiver. Probably need some depth at tight end. Need some help on the defensive line. Elijah Roberts and Alfred Collins go in the picks leading up to. So now, Femi Oladejo was not on my list, but is a guy that I know has a strong reputation. I'm not in love with Femi Oladejo. If I have to scroll down to the next guy that's on my list, it's Savion Williams. Well, it's actually Charles Grant, I believe, but I said no more offensive linemen because they've drafted a whole bunch of offensive linemen. They've drafted 2 offensive linemen. So I think our next guy, Savion Williams, makes some sense. You start to think about Jalen Milroe here. We have 2 picks in a row. I always end up drafting Quinn Ewers. I'm going to draft. I'm doing it. I'm going out on the limb. I'm drafting Jalen Milroe to be quarterback slash, first couple years be that Cordell Stewart slash quarterback slash. Savion Williams, similar, a guy that's just got all kinds of versatility that'll make the defense or the offense interesting. That can do a whole bunch of stuff. I wonder if you could find a receiver. I have this theory about the running back position going away, which I think I might be wrong on, or I'm getting closer to being wrong on. But the idea that you could have receivers who could run the ball effectively, who can spell each other. Femi Oladejo's still there. I'm going to take a look at the running back position because I've picked 137 next, and I don't really want to miss out on. So I like Brashard Smith at 136. Did Tootin already go? No, Tootin they have a 202 now? Well, I'm going to take him much earlier than that then. I guess in real life, the Seahawks aren't really doing this probably don't have this kind of intel as to where someone's going to go. It's probably a little more random than is shown here, but damn. He fell down that list. I like him a lot more than that. I think that means I could probably get him at 137. So let's see. Let's see what else is available. Femi Oladejo is very appealing here. I don't really want to reach if I don't have to for a guy that I like a lot. So, how do you say it? Pegues? This is the dude that everyone keeps talking about being like a defensive tackle slash fullback, which I think is interesting. I think he's even like run the ball in. He had a couple rushing touchdowns also. I'm like, I don't know why that I'm less excited about than Savion Williams and Jalen Milroe not playing super well defined positions, but we're gonna go Femi Oladejo because we're running out of guys that are reasonable picks. I had not put any hope on the edge position. I had, by the way, in an earlier draft of the my guys list, I had Femi Oladejo on there, and I wanted it to not be super long, and I wanted it to be guys that I'm like truly pound the table passionate for, and he's just not one of those guys, but I do think he's pretty good value at that spot. And a guy I think the Seahawks could reasonably be interested in. And I don't think edge is a huge priority necessarily, even though I think you'll start to see that. But I do think I saw, oh man, it's the guy from, what's that called? I never can think. 33rd Team, I think, is the place he does his podcast. But he's got the long curly hair, and he said a thing that was like, I think it was him that said you're never set at offensive line, defensive line, or cornerback. Like you never have enough depth. Always drafted those positions. When in doubt, add to those positions. Something like that. I liked it on X/Twitter. But I do roughly believe that. I'm going to speed this up a little bit so I don't have to filibuster too long between picks. Some of you might argue that's already been the case. So we traded away the 175th pick. So I think just the 1 5th rounder. So Isaac Tesla is interesting. Kyle Williams, I know they had a 30 visit with, and I believe it counted as a 30 visit. I don't know. I'm not constantly following 30 visits, but I believe that the Brashard Smith here is very tempting. Knowing that Basil Tootin will probably fall I like Brashard Smith a little bit better just because I think he's a better fit for what the Seahawks need. We're taking Brashard Smith. Can I talk myself into Tootin later? I'll be Tootin later. Basil Tootin would be such a fun name to have on the roster. What was I talking about with I think I lost my thought. If Tyler Shuck's available here at in the 5th round, I almost think you're like, I don't think you will be, and I'm not going to do it, but I almost think you're like, damn, take a second quarterback. Buy Drew Lock, buy Sam Howell. Um, is Zeke Biggers here? I'd be Jalen Lane's another guy I talked about as a guy. I actually think he makes a fair amount of sense, but I think with Savion Williams, the need for someone on the outside is reduced. Dante Thornton's another guy who was close to he was on a first draft of that list. Zoff Frazier's there. We're going to go Zoff Frazier because I think that they certainly need more than one corner out of the process. They need some depth. I'm sure they will bring some guys in undrafted free agency, but losing that 175th pick is hard, though, because missed the chance on Basil Tootin, missed the chance on, Zeke Biggers, guy that I liked a lot that I was considering tracking down there, and a guy which the position has not been filled. We have not found a nose tackle. So Ty Robinson, 310 pounds. I think, if you don't have Byron Murphy, if you don't have Leonard Williams, this is like great value at this spot. Now you're just looking for, can we find a guy that's 330 pounds? I know there's one other guy floating around, but I think that's you're officially not getting a nose tackle in the draft. So the question in the 6th and 7th round is, are you drafting the guys with the highest upside or guys that fill holes? I would almost always like them to be drafting for highest upside here. And frankly, I'd like them to be drafting guys with high upside at every position in the draft. I'm not risk averse. Taking a guy who's got a low ceiling and a high floor. Obviously, there's a blend of those two things that go into making that decision. But, so Jackson Slater's here. Do you draft him going like, well, you're certainly not going to have a chance. He's going to get drafted by somebody else, or you might not get a chance to sign him in undrafted free agency. Maybe someone else offers him a little more guaranteed money. You also have Luke Lachey here. I suspect Jabbar Muhammad's still around. Clay Webb's still around. I think Clay Webb's right there. The Jacksonville State logo really stands out. I never don't see it. Really just stands out as one of the ugliest logos on here. It's just like a written out. Jabbar Muhammad ranked very low. Shiloh Sanders. Do you get in the Sanders game with Shiloh? Boy, we gotta scroll forward somehow. There we go. I think I'm taking Jackson. Am I crazy? Jackson Slater, I think I'm taking, instead of, do I take Lachey or Jackson Slater? I think I'm taking Jackson Slater, hoping I'll get Lachey at that next pick. Curtis Rourke goes. I don't think the Seahawks are going to draft. Fuck, Lachey just went. All right, I don't think I could have gotten both. To give myself a little bit of leeway, I don't think I could have gotten both. Slater has a chance to play center. Aronde Gadsden is not a Casey's guy. But so now you're in your last pick of the draft. Are you drafting a guy that you're not certain you'll get as a free agent, or are you drafting a guy that you actually want to draft? Drafted 3 offensive linemen. Clay Webb is not going to be the pick here. Though I don't necessarily, I don't have a problem with them drafting 4 offensive linemen. If it means they fill that position, like, I am on board with throwing a shitload of resources at that spot. Historically, I have put Jabbar Muhammad at the end of a lot of these. It gets a really bad grade. I think Muhammad has enough Seattle ties. Donovan Edwards still available there in the 7th round. With Tootin going late, Edwards still available here. Like, I don't know if I kind of feel bad about the Brashard Smith pick, to be honest with you. Man, is he really? No, he was on the last of the second. I was like, Jesus, is he really like the last guy they have? 311th. That's so crazy. By the way, they don't have Isaac Nayer or Isaiah Nayer on here. I don't think anyway. They have not historically. Did he? Nope. We're gonna look real quick just to see. They just don't have him. They don't have him listed. They don't have a scouting report. They don't have him as a player on here. Guy to keep an eye on. Probably will go undrafted, but okay. We're gonna end the agony. We're gonna draft. Wait, am I stupid? Did I somehow? Okay, I was like, did I? We're drafting Jabbar Muhammad to close it out. We'll get there in a moment. Wait, did I draft 2 corners? I did, because I draft. I think we're gonna go Gadsden, which I don't even like Gadsden that much, but decent value at that spot. And you gotta love a former NFL player's child, right? Where are you at? There you are, Rondé Gadsden. The second. Are people doing the second instead of junior pretty often now? It seems like it's a lot more common now than it used to be. So that'll be the draft. We'll see what our grade is. It's probably not going to be very high. As I've started to do more like what would realistically happen, it's gotten a lot less. Yeah, I mean, Darian Porter, Tate Ratledge in the second round, like, good luck. Those are going to get good grades in real life, by the way, from people, if that matters at all. Zoff Frazier in the 5th gets an F, which is fun. Jackson Slater gets an A-. Femi Oladejo is the only A. I still regret not getting the nose tackle, not getting Kenneth Grant in the first round, not getting Alfred Collins later. I think that was a mistake. Next week we're gonna try to actually do good instead of doing. We'll do a couple where we try to do good on this, try to get our highest grade. I am not gonna be doing much coverage the days of. I'll put some reels on YouTube is what I'll do. I think because I'm gonna be at Portland Helium with my buddy Ron Hirschberg. But by the way, if you live out there, come on out to that. Anyways, thank you for listening to this Casey McLean comedy on social media, except for X, where I am the Casey McLean. Watch my special. Listen to my other podcast, Underseasoned, which will very soon be changing its name to Unseasoned because we have an overlapping name with an Australian barbecue show on YouTube. And we actually kind of like the name Unseasoned better. So, all right, thanks everybody. Leave your negative comments.